Hi, it's good to be back. And so we're going to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes around the calendar, because the calendar and the mini lesson, you can't really talk about one without talking about the other. The calendar is kind of the frame, and the mini lessons are the thing. And so we're going to probably work from this point here, and then I'll also be putting a display on the board over there. So just feel free to shift if you can't see. I know there's some little pockets here that, that block the vision, so move if you need to. So the calendar. So if you would, on your folder, if you would turn to the calendar page, the spot that looks like this. Oh, good. Okay. Look at you. Very cool. And if you have a highlighter or a marker or an ink pen or something, just really want you to intentionally notice and circle. So here's lesson 1 being introduced during revision of unit 1, returning to that same lesson during drafting of unit 2, and then revisiting it during the generating part of unit 3. So we know from the research that we need to come back to those. We can't just teach a dash once and think people have it for life. We know we want to intentionally teach it 3 times across the year. And we also know that means that we're probably going to be teaching in pockets also. So I might be doing a conference table where I'm returning to the dash again. So we know that we adjust our teaching for our kids' needs. So just really notice that sequence of lessons. And that idea comes from my favorite grammar friend is probably Mary Aaronworth from The Power of Grammar. And if you have the book available in your area, you might want to open one of these up. We have 4 or 5 copies here for you to borrow. But mine opens up automatically now to the calendar page, which is 44 and 45. This book was published before the Common Core. So these units will look a little different at the top. But this is a curriculum calendar, and you can see she calls it free writing, drafting, and revision. But lesson 1 is end punctuation. Lesson 2 is paragraphing. And then we move over to unit 2, and we see during drafting, lesson 1, end punctuation, lesson 2, paragraphing. And then we've got a lesson 3 introduced at the end of the unit. So you see that same structure. So this is the template that we designed the calendar from, that page. 44 and 45. So many of you are moving to calendaring today, and it can get a little bit overwhelming. So your glossary informs what your mini lessons are going to be about. And of course, the standards have informed your glossary. So here's one way to go about it. And I'm going to ask Erin and Amy at any point in time to feel free to add in. And I'm going to be taking this over to that wall, so you want to make sure you can be somewhere where you can kind of see it. So I did a 9th grade example. And you could do this. Thank you, my lovely assistant Beth. Okay. So I didn't spend as much time on this as the 9th grade team will, because they've been studying the standards. I don't know the 9th grade standards inside and out. I know standards kind of across K-12 at not a deep enough depth, because I work in all grade levels. But I went through the 9th, 10th grade standards, and then because our work here is to produce a calendar that aligns with the MAISA units, I looked at those units. So if you're not teaching the MAISA units, that's okay. The calendar will still work for you. So when you get together in your grade level teams, one calendar does need to align to the MAISA unit topics. And if you're using different units, you might then want to take those same mini lessons and figure out where they would go on your calendar. But for the good of the group, the reason that this group is gathered from across the state is to have a common calendar for the MAISA units. Amy or Erin, do you want to add anything into that?
So then I imagine when you go to your spot and you reconvene, hey, how was your night last night? Probably the first thing you'll say is, how many of us are going to sit at this table and work on this MAISA calendar? And how many of us have the total license to go sit right over there
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so today you'll probably start to differentiate what your tasks are. So I put the units across the top, and you'll notice in the secondary world there are usually fewer units than you have in the elementary world. And then I went to my standards, and standard 2 is pretty basic. And you guys may have realized yesterday, for the most part, standards 1, 2, and 3 live pretty comfortably within writing workshop. Standards 4, 5, and 6, not as much, though there are some that I found when I did this. So standard 2 is about standard conventions. And so I know that my launching is a personal narrative unit, and so it just makes good sense to keep reviewing those conventions during that mini lesson. So what my process here is I looked at the standards, I looked at the units, I pretended I looked at a glossary because I didn't have the glossary with me, and I thought, okay, what kind of mini lessons rise to the top? What are the things I'm going to teach across the year? And I just wrote those on sticky notes. I tried to write the name of the standard with them also, just to keep myself honest. And so kind of covering up the bottom part, so not worrying so much about where things are going to repeat, just thinking, where does it make the most sense to teach that grammar concept? First. So anything that's here is going to be repeated 3 times. So I just started that. It's kind of a mess to start with. I like the sticky note way of doing that. Certainly you could also do that on the computer. So in 9th grade, you start to introduce MLA, so the particular formatting of a document. And it seems to me that I might, and I don't have it here right now, but I might stick my toe in the water of MLA as early as literary essay, just with in-text citations, so that we know that we've got the proper citation of the author's name. And then MLA is going to continue to build. Colon and semicolon are taught in 9th grade, intentionally taught, so I know I'm going to repeat those 3 times. So I just kind of thought, where might things work? And I know they're not going to stay there necessarily. So that's kind of where I'm going to start to build my calendar. Where does it make the most sense to put things? At the same time, what do my students need to know during the first unit? What's the most important concept that they need to learn or to review? So Amy, Aaron, you want to add anything to that?
The Aaron work and the samples we've given you very neat. You know, I introduced it in drafting in Unit 1, so towards the end of the unit. Primary people, you don't divide it up. It's not that neat. I mean, the people who write the most drafts are kindergartners, 5 a day. But the things get introduced in that drafting and then move up. But what we found is that there, for example, we were working on 1 grade level where it was punctuation for dialogue. We thought that was potentially not really going to come up in informational writing. So,
Sorry, you keep going,
Okay, trying to get that to follow you. So we skipped it. There we go. So here we are. We're trying hard. So what we said is, okay, we introduced it here. We brought it in again during drafting here. Whoops, we're going to skip the informational unit, and we're going to put that up at the very beginning of another unit. So it's not always going to be a neat progression. You may have to do some adjusting. And that's what we found with the very first time we did this back in the content expectation days. So just know, that's why the stickies are nice, because you can kind of play with where does that lesson repeat.
Thank you, Amy.